Don't forget to subscribe and turn notifications on. So, Rashid bhai, moving forward swiftly, in the common era that we're living now, in this current time, especially, say, the last 10 years, the fitna, you can say, is kind of intensified against Muslims, against Islam. The number of anti-Islamic stuff that is being produced, the number of anti-Islamic comments and far-right people, or far left, whichever one it is, they're say now against Islam. And listening to a bayan lately, a debate between a Muslim and a Christian, Sheikh Asrar Rashid recently in Manchester. If any of the viewers haven't watched that, it's a great talk to watch. But one thing they mentioned is, in the past, the argument between Christianity and Islam, they talk about whatever they talk about. It's only in the last 100 years that they've brought into debate the age of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu anha. And this is a common tool, or a common criticism that Ghair Muslims put forward, not only to confuse the Muslims, but also to put doubt in people who don't know about Islam. Because so in a way, they mention age, they mention this, and the person who's not Muslim, they automatically think negative. So in regards to the age of Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu anha, what do the ulama say? What was the correct age?
I mean, the majority opinion is, what the hadith of Bukhari Sharif says, 6 or 7, it actually says 6 or 7. And, when she actually, when the marriage was consummated, or she began to live with the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at that time it was 9. And that is the majority, Sunni opinion. But, and there are Sunni ulama who have different opinions, that, she was around 15 when the marriage took place. But, either or, both are valid opinions.
Right.
And, most of the books do say it was 6 years old. This is it's surprising, because this is an issue that, even the majority of Muslim, our elder generation, our Pakistani community even, are not aware of this issue.
Right,
I had a personal experience once. I was teaching in a masjid, and it was like a Seerat class, once a week, and they were all older generation Buzurgs. So they weren't people of our generation. They weren't youngsters, they were the older generation. And I just happened to one day be doing a lesson on the Seerat and the marriages of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm mentioning the ages, and one particular individual I can remember, even though this was good 6-7 years, maybe longer ago, he was quite shocked when he heard that this was the age of Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu ta'ala, and he was looking at me as though he wasn't believing me, or
took aback.
So I think even our older generation are not aware. A lot of them, unless they really read books, I don't think they're aware of this issue. And even mentioning it, I think, is something that, even from a Shari perspective, we should speak to people according to their intellect.
Bilkul.
And if mentioning the age of Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala is going to make some Muslims weaken their iman as well, it's something that shouldn't be mentioned to them. But at the same time, I know why you want to talk about it, and I know it's important to answer the objections of the non-Muslims as well. But yeah, there's so many angles to this issue, because for us, firstly, we can't compare ourselves to the Prophet to begin with. So fundamentally, a Muslim's Aqidah is, if the Holy Prophet did many things that were exceptions, and then we can't compare, and that we don't need to follow. So the idea of marrying someone the same age as you, that's encouraged in Islam. And our fiqh books like Bahari Shariat, Raddul Muhtar, Hanafi fiqh books clearly state it's discouraged to marry off your daughter to someone who's very, very old.
Right. Because
that's clear in our fiqh. So the guidance for us normal Muslims is, don't marry off, don't have a massive gap.
Right.
We use the word kufr, which means compatible in Arabic. It's really important to stress that, they both be compatible. So compatibility is a really big issue. Mental compatibility, physical compatibility. So it's jaiz in Islam to marry off someone that young, but that would only be in certain cases. So generally, even in our deen, it's discouraged to have that big a gap. But that's for us. We don't compare ourselves to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If him marrying Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha at that age was something which was meant to be for the whole ummah, then many ulama would have done that. But the majority of ulama don't.
Right.
So it shows that that's one of those things that we accept. He's an exception. Like him having more than 4 wives is an exception.
Bilkul.
Sarkar-e-Madina sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tahajjud namaz was first for him. So 6 namazes were first for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not just 5. Tahajjud for us is sunnat.
Bilkul.
For the Holy Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, it was for us. So he was an exception in many things. So the angle that when non-Muslims object about Islam, there's 2 ways. There's sort of 2 reasons why they object. One is that they believe, ma'azallah, if someone, because in our society, someone of that age marrying his wife being of that young age, ma'azallah, they're not setting a good example.
Right.
And on the other hand, it's like, Muslims are going to follow that. That's the other aspect of it. Bilkul. So Muslims are not following it.
Bilkul, 100%.
Which means that we believe that was an exception, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing that. And the other thing about Aka sallallahu alaihi wasallam being an example, to decide whether or not someone is a good role model for the whole of mankind, you can't just take one event and not look at the background of that event 100%. And just sort of judge them off the back of that. Like you were saying earlier as well, that the whole culture at that time was different. Marrying off at that younger age wasn't frowned upon. Even in Europe, like you said yourself, it's only in the last century or so that this is blown out of proportion. I can't remember the exact names of the dates, but European kings and queens being married off in their teenagers. So the cultural difference at that time, that marrying someone at that age, it wasn't really frowned upon. And the other thing, one other thing which is interesting is, I was just reading that Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, she was 18 years old when Sarkar sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. So one of the wisdoms, one of the hikmats in her the Holy Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam marrying her at that younger age, she was like the direct student of the Holy Prophet alayhi salam. Because she was so young that she was then able to spend 40 years after the Holy Prophet alayhi salam passed away, teaching and passing on to the Sahaba the hadith of the Prophet. So it's because she was that young that she could then, 44 years after the Holy Prophet alayhi salam passed away, she could convey the deen to the ummah. The Holy Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam himself said, take 2/3 of your deen from Aisha. 2/3 of your deen. And I'll try bringing this up. I can't remember. I think she's the second in terms of hadith narration. When we talk about how many ahadith, which of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated the most ahadith. Only Hazrat Abu Huraira was the only companion who had reported as many ahadith as she did. So this vast majority, the bulk of this massive collection of ahadith that we got from her. And so it's because she was only 18 at the time of the passing away of the Holy Prophet that she was able to then convey many things that many ahadith were to do with the personal, marital life and female issues, which Sarkar sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not say on the mimbar, or he, due to his haya, sometimes people would ask him masail, women would ask him masail about menses or things like that, and he would hesitate to speak exactly clearly. And then Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anhu would explain those issues, so many personal issues as well. So for the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, take 2/3 of your deen from her, So she was like one of the greatest students of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in that sense as well. Another interesting thing, you know, when we talk about the how the environment, how girls can mature quicker in a certain environment, like the Quran Pak talks about Hazrat Maryam radiyallahu ta'ala anha, and Allah Ta'ala says that we made her grow, and nabatan hasanan is the word in the glorious Quran, that her health was hasan, it was very good. And the Mufassirin say in the tafsir of that ayat karima that Sayyidah Maryam radiyallahu ta'ala anha used to physically mature in one day the equivalent of what average women would mature in 1 week.
SubhanAllah. The Mufassirin say,
commentators of the Quran say that she would mature in 1 day equivalent of what others would mature in 1 week. And those similar words, you know, nabat and shabab and hasan, and Imam Nawawi has used those similar words, kad nabata Aisha shabab and hasan, that Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu, Imam Nawawi has used similar words for her, that she grew physically, she matured very, very quickly. So looking at the context of that time, you know, how girls matured, and that can be different depending on the country as well. So to compare, one is that even as Muslims, we don't like comparing ourselves to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, because we always believe he's beyond comparison, and he's an exception to everything. And also, this issue of Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, it could be also, you know, like the Mi'raj. Allah Ta'ala says that the Mi'raj, Aka Kareem alayhi salam traveling thousands of miles in just a few seconds of the night. Allah Ta'ala refers to the Mi'raj as a test for the people. It was an event to which it was to test the strong Muslims from the weak ones, and from the hypocrites, from the, you know, the sincere ones.
By the incident being unbelievable unless you have faith. I understand.
And so it's also possible, I mean, I've definitely heard one of my ustads says, you know, for this ummah, even the marriage, the issue of Sarkar Madina sallallahu alaihi wasallam marrying our blessed mother Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha at that age, it could be, it's like a test for the ummah. Do you close your eyes and do you believe that your Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, everything he did was wisdom, it was all from Allah Ta'ala? So even his marriage with Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, it was through wahi, it was through the will of Allah Ta'ala, it was through the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of the negative things that people associate this day and age with someone of a really old age marrying someone of a younger age, the negative things that, you know, they won't be compatible, they won't understand each other, or he won't treat her properly, he won't mentally understand her, he won't physically or emotionally understand. All the negative things, they can't be applied to the Holy Prophet because he himself wasn't physically or emotionally a normal human being. He would understand Sayyidah Aisha. To say he didn't understand her emotionally, you know, he was a prophet, we believe he understood everyone, and he had a knowledge of the unseen. Allah Ta'ala gave the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, the ulama, the Sufiya say that when Allah Ta'ala created intellect, he gave it 100 parts, and 99 parts of the 100 of intellect, of akal, he gave to his Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and only one part is what's being distributed to the rest of creation. So to imply all of the negative things that people want to apply, the non-Muslims, the Islamophobes want to imply that because he was so old, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or if someone, they want to then fit in our minds this image of a really old person who can barely walk, can barely talk, and who's ma'azallah abusing someone of that young age. Physically, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not, you know, like any average person, or emotionally he wasn't, psychologically he wasn't. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, despite being at the age of 63 when he veiled himself, he passed away. There were, you know, there were barely 20 white hairs in the hair of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So those whole comparisons for Muslims is so weird. we don't compare him to the average person in the first place. So it's an exception, whatever he does. We know that Aka alayhi salam never struck any of his wives.
Bishop.
The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never hit any woman or khadim. So there's no element of emotional abuse, no element of physical abuse, which is what Islamophobes want to insinuate.
That's the...
And like I said, Azmaish is like, it's that test for even some Muslims even. When they hear of that, they sort of shakes them.
Right.
But may Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to be strong and understand that yes, you can have the opinion that she was 15 when she got married. But even if someone has the opinion that she was 6 when she got married, we should, believe with certainty that there's, with unwavering certainty that even that shouldn't decrease our adab for the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shouldn't have any doubt about it. And it seems like an issue that the Islamophobes would raise anyway, even if we proved that she was 15 or 18, they'd probably still say.
Yeah, if it's not one thing, it'll be something else. Yeah. If it's not something else, that the nitpicking will continue.
Yeah, even if she was exactly the same age as the Holy Prophet, the nitpicking would still continue.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Because something so... Azur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, obviously the belief of every Muslim is he's the most beloved of all creations. But if somebody doesn't have faith, and that aim is to look at something, be it the Quran Sharif, the Seerat of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like there's, I think, is it a narration or so, there's a state of what the scholars say, that the Quran can guide people and it can misguide people.
Yeah.
Is that a correct saying? Or?
Many people are misguided by the Quran.
Yeah, because obviously if you...
Their own intentions.
Exactly.
You
so
get from it.
If you got evil intentions to look for faults in it, then...
And then even some non-Muslim historians who've looked at the Hazrat Aisha issue, not all non-Muslims have objected. Some non-Muslims, I can't remember the references at the moment, but they've actually said, well, there's nothing wrong, that was okay according to the culture.
Bilkul.
So it's not all... So we've got some non-Muslim statements that don't object about that, which shows that... So even if a non-Muslim that really wasn't an Islamophobe and was unbiased and studied his whole life and put the marriage with the Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha in context with his entire life and all of his dealings with Hazrat Aisha, and after he passed away, how Hazrat Aisha served the Ummah, put all those three things together, there's very... even a non-Muslim would... putting everything into context, he would not really object. So it seems like the Islamophobes who are not even studying Islam properly, they're just studying the bits that they want to study, the ones that they can use, for ammunition against Islam. I missed the point of one of the main hikmats is Allah Ta'ala wanted to bring the Holy Prophet ﷺ and Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq closer as well.
Subhanallah.
So that was Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu himself is narrated to have said that I would wish for my daughter to be married to him sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So it was Allah Ta'ala wanted to bring Sayyidina Siddiq Akbar, was the greatest in the Ummah, the closest friend. He'd been with the Holy Prophet alayhi salam since they were 18, 20, so they were like teenage friends. And Allah Ta'ala wanted there to be that relationship through marriage as well. They were related to blood as well, if you follow the bloodline, the genealogy of Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq and the Holy Prophet alayhi salam, they were probably in the 7th or 8th generation, they had the same great grandfather. But Allah Ta'ala wanted to give Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq of that sharaf of his daughter being married to the Holy Prophet alayhi salam. So that was definitely one of the greatest hikmats as well.
So Rashba, in regards to this particular topic regarding the age of Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is it fair to say that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spread Islam, he was insulted with various different insults by his closest family members, the numerous words, magician, and so many things, but the age, marrying somebody of a young age, that is something that was never attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, then even by his enemies who used the most evil, wicked tactics to make him suffer, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So could you even say that because of that, that it's a normal practice in that time, that even the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ never brought this issue up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's one of the points that we can say. So yeah, that's a valid point, that if this was a valid objection in that day and age, it would have been asked and it would have been recorded in books of hadith or even in the Quran Sharif, because the glorious Quran does mention like any objections that were made by the kuffar, like the ma'azallah, the blasphemies, them calling Aka alayhi salam like ma'azallah a shair, a poet, and ma'azallah even saying magician and things like that. So their blasphemies were recorded and Allah Ta'ala answered. And even when the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Hazrat Zainab radiyallahu ta'ala anha, that was mentioned in the Quran. That was something that they objected to. The reason, him marrying Sayyida Zainab was something that the kuffar objected to, and Allah Ta'ala answered that objection in the Quran. The objection there was that Hazrat Zainab radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she was previously, before marrying the Holy Prophet ﷺ, was married to Hazrat Zaid, who was the adopted son of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when Hazrat Zaid, the adopted son of the Holy Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam, divorced Sayyida Zainab, and then Aka alayhi salatu wasallam married Sayyida Zainab, the kuffar objected that you've married the Muslim Prophet, he's married the ex-wife of his son.
Was it adopted son? Or
and so that's when the Quran Pak revealed that a man is allowed to marry the ex-wife of his adopted son, but not his biological son. So that particular objection that the kuffar made, that was answered. So if this was also something that they objected to, Allah Ta'ala would have, that's one of the khususiyat, that's the shan and the greatness of the Holy Prophet, that Allah Ta'ala answers and defends his Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also, there's a hadith, a famous hadith in Nasa'i Sharif, that when Aka alayhi salatu wasalam was himself marrying his own daughter Sayyida Fatima off, and I think she was younger than, she was maybe 15 at that time, and before he married Sayyida Fatima to Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, the first two great Khalifs, they proposed, they brought, asking the Holy Prophet alayhi salam for Sayyida Fatima's hand in marriage. But the hadith in Nasa'i Sharif says that it's because of the age gap, that there was a massive age gap, that Aka alayhi salatu wasalam didn't go ahead with that marriage. And also the Holy Prophet alayhi salam was waiting for, or he knew, or he was waiting for wahi, regarding whatever Allah Ta'ala commands him, wherever Allah Ta'ala tells him to marry his daughter Sayyida Fatima. So, but according to the hadith of Nasa'i, it's because of the age gap, that she was very young. So that shows as well that the idea of marrying someone very old to someone young, it's disapproved of in our deen, except for it was acceptable. There's exceptional circumstances, and generally that's not something recommended. And as I mentioned earlier as well, our fiqh books, Hanafi fiqh books, do not marry off your your daughter to someone who's very, very old. So compatibility is definitely something that.
And this, what you've just mentioned, I didn't know that about Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq and Sayyidina Umar. So this is well known and
so that's in Nasa'i, that's in Sahih, the Sihah Sitta as well. So that's a common hadith as well.
MashaAllah. So thank you for that, Rashid Bhai, firstly for that in-depth answer. I think the shan of the Prophet ﷺ is this, that whatever aspect of his life you talk about, you can just keep talking. Like I feel like with this topic in particular, or you can keep talking, and you've just mentioned numerous wisdoms behind this, and I think we can keep going, but because we are time restricted.
And the reason I just like to say, like when we started off, I said I was a bit hesitant to talk about it, and I'd just like to say that again, we can talk about his shan, every aspect. But it's just we're in a time where even Muslims sometimes, because of their lack of knowledge and the lack of adab as well, obviously the adab amongst Muslims and the respect isn't on that level as the previous. like even Muslims, sometimes we can't talk about certain things about our Prophet's life to Muslims even. Because we know Muslims don't have the
ability to understand.
The mental ability, and sometimes even, I don't know if I can say the haya as well, and the love and the respect in their hearts. Our hearts are not, the hearts of many Muslims are not vast enough to actually absorb what we've got to say about him.
100%.
Sometimes we need to hesitate when even saying that something's a sunnah or a prophet did something. Like I said, you know, that when I was teaching that class and I mentioned the age of Sayyidina Aisha, there was this old man, Pakistani, very older generation. He was like shocked. He was like, he didn't want to hear that or something. And even I thought for a second, maybe I shouldn't have told him. It's not something 100%. We don't, as Muslims, we don't have to know the ages of the blessed mothers, the wives of the Holy Prophet. It's not Zururiyat Deen, it's not something that we're going to be questioned for. But just Muslim minds these days don't have that capacity to absorb certain things. I don't think any intellectual, Muslim or non-Muslim, if he's unbiased, will ever object on the ages. It'll always be, it's naive, it'll be someone who's not looking at the whole life of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, who's not looking at the time it was in, who's not looking at the benefits that arose out of that marriage, and someone who just wants to object. I don't think any intellectual would. So even Muslims, when we discuss this to Muslims, I think we should be careful, especially the older generation.
100%. Going off the back of what you said, like you just met some people, they don't understand something, and I feel now there's a trend, is we don't understand issues, but we like to talk about them. For example, like fiqh issues when it comes to Ramzan calendars, right? Regardless of what mosque a person follows with their calendar, and there's always a few different, calendars, different means. Sometimes it's a little bit a short time, sometimes it's a big time, but when people don't understand that there's a mufti, someone behind this who's given the okay for this calendar, and it's fine for them to follow that calendar, we go into this situation of you're right, we're wrong, and we don't even know the issue of and the science behind the namaz calendar, because the namaz itself, the times are calculated, is quite scientific, isn't it, based on the sun. And so like I was saying, like the science behind the sun and how the sun dictates, I wouldn't say the word dictate, but how the salah times are based on positioning of the sun at particular times throughout the day. These things the masses don't understand, but they like to talk about. And what I wanted to ask yourself is that even similar to the issue is the moon issue, like, we always disagree on that. What I wanted to ask is, if the common person who goes to a masjid, whatever that masjid may be, he just keeps it simple, praises namaz, he just says that there's a mufti or there's a scholar or there's a Muslim in the case of the moon sighting that's seen the moon, or a mufti who's given the okay to this calendar, and he follows it, that individual, he won't be held accountable, is that correct, for that particular issue, if it's a fiqh?
That's an interesting issue. In fiqh issues, what the public should do is always, as long as a member of the public is asking someone, they just have to do one thing: make sure that the person you're asking is qualified. Make sure he's a qualified mufti. If he's a qualified mufti, you've done what you need to do. You've saved yourself. Now let's say there's two qualified muftis, both two qualified Sunni muftis, and they've got their own issue. They've got different opinions, and two members of the public are, there's one following them, some are following them, because they're following qualified muftis. But you need to make sure that they're qualified, not just follow any imam.
Right.
Every imam is not in a position to give rulings about the Eid and the namaz time. And then you're okay, you've saved yourself. Even at the end of the day, like, one of them two imams is going to be right and wrong. If they're differing in halal and haram, one of them is definitely going to be wrong. One of them is going to be right. Even if you end up following the wrong one, well, it's okay, because he's a qualified mufti. Even when a qualified mufti makes an error in judgment, he gets sawab for it. And so because you followed a qualified mufti, even if he made an error, which will, even if you don't find out in your lifetime, maybe you'll find out on the day of Qiyamah, but if you never find out, it doesn't matter.
And is that why whenever people write fatwa, muftis write fatwa, at the end they always write, Allah knows best? Yeah,
definitely. And most imams are not muftis. So there is one thing that, like I said already, that what the public have to do is definitely make sure that whoever they're following is qualified. A qualified Sunni mufti. Most imams are not muftis.
Muftis, 100%.
And even not everyone with the title of mufti behind is a mufti, is a qualified.
Right.
Some people may have, being a mufti is got its own. It's a degree in itself. It's a qualification itself. Some people have maybe just done it for 1 or 2 years and then they've, like a shortcut mufti course or something. Some people might have been muftis in the past, but they've not been practicing it for 10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
And so they've, they're not practicing mufti. It's like, even being a solicitor or a barrister.
Yeah.
Law, you got to keep on practicing it, otherwise you forget it.
Yeah.
If someone practiced law in 98 and then he stopped it in 2000 and he hasn't done it for 20 years, and in 2020, for 20 years he's not been practicing it, he's not been working in the firm, he's just been sat at home doing something else. He in 2020 can't just for you to just expect him to be able to give like legal rulings about law. It won't happen.
Understood.
So the public should at least make sure that the person they're asking is qualified.
Right.
They don't need to know every single reasoning for what the opinion that he's giving, but make sure that the person you're asking is qualified. Try your best to ascertain that, not just follow any imam. And in furu'i ikhtilaf, it's always safer to take the harder opinion. The harder one, it's not easy, but the harder opinion usually is the safer one. When you're not sure, there's 2 opinions, and one opinion is, namaz starts at this time, another one is namaz starts at, an earlier time, or the fasting, should be stopped at an earlier time, or fasting should be stopped at a later time. It's always the to start your fast and to stop your sahri at the earlier time is always the safer one, even though it is harder.
Yeah, so break your fast at the earlier time, but pray your fajr at the later time, kind of. So then you've kind of secured yourself in both sides, then, haven't you?
Yeah.